Welcome to Sparks of Love. My name is Jerry Lynn Sparks, and today in studio we have a very special guest. We have Dave Turner. Welcome, Dave.
Hey, man. Thanks for having me.
Yeah.
It's good to be here.
Yeah, and we have Evan King here with us and also Scott Fitzgerald.
Hello.
And Dave is a local musician who I actually found. I want to tell how I met him. So I wanted to have an end-of-the-year party in December for my friends, and this is my second annual party, and I wanted to show them love, and I wanted to surprise them. And so I thought, what is the thing that I love? Probably, if you've known me a long time, like I'm obsessed with music. Like I go to so many concerts and live shows, and pretty much my whole life. My grandparents were bluegrass musicians. I grew up in the church singing Southern Baptist gospel. Like music has been a part of my life forever. Mm-hmm. And I saw Dave when I did a Google search, and I was transfixed. I'm like, oh my God, who is this guy?
Yeah, I didn't know this. I haven't heard the story yet.
Yeah, I didn't get to tell you because the party was underway when you got there. And so I listened to several of your clips that you have on your website, and I'd looked at a lot of different musicians. And when I heard you, I'm like, I have to get this person. And I didn't know you, and I messaged you, and you just happened to be free. And I'm like, life is short. I'm going to do this. I'm going to hire a live musician for this party, and my friends are going to be wowed. And that's what happened.
Had you never done that before?
Never.
Really?
No.
Oh, I'm honored.
Well, we had a friend who plays like local gigs, but he's not a professional musician, come a couple years ago. But that wasn't like this gig where you're in my house, in the living room. Like we had the whole house set up. I moved my Christmas tree, gave him a stage space, and he came with his whole setup. Like your gear was pretty impressive.
Yeah, it's a lot. I got a lot of toys.
Yeah.
I've been doing it a while, but I think most of the time when I go to do anything, that's I get that all the time.
Yeah.
Boy, you've got a lot of equipment.
Yeah. Well, tell me a little bit about your musical journey, and then we can get into, the love of music, which I want to talk with you about and how we show love in music. But
Sure.
Tell me about your love of music. How is music how you show love?
Well, I think that it's interesting. I haven't listened to a bunch of these other episodes, but I'll be very curious to hear your take on have you hear my take on all of this stuff. Because, I think I get often that like you're a musician. So you do what you love to do. And everybody just kind of assumes that. Now, like I very much like my job, but after 11 years and, doing like 330 plus gigs a year.
Wow.
It does kind of become a job, So, and it's like, I do really, really enjoy it. I do have this conversation with people a lot though, that like when you end up doing the same. So before we started recording, you were talking to me about Tennessee whiskey.
Yeah.
I sang Tennessee whiskey for you guys.
It's amazing. It's so good.
You guys enjoyed it, right?
Yes.
So when I remember the moment that I first heard that song.
By Chris Stapleton.
By Chris Stapleton.
Really?
I love Chris Stapleton.
No.
Yeah.
See, so that was kind of my point. Everybody knows that song. Yeah. Everybody knows that song. Yeah. And I remember the moment that I first heard that song.
Me too.
I was I was playing at a bar called King's Pub in the basement of a hotel in Waikiki. So I spent 11 years living in Waikiki and 8 years out there playing professionally. That's where I got my start. And I remember being in the basement. I was on break and somebody played it on the jukebox, and it had just come out. I can't remember what year it was. Yeah. Must have been like 2015, something like that. Yeah. And I was just like, wow, this song, incredible, right? Yeah. Fast forward. Now I've probably played that song 1,000 times, and I've heard it 1,000 times, and it is quickly becoming synonymous with Wagon Wheel as just a song that everybody wants to hear all the time.
Which I've seen that live too. Darius Rucker, I've seen him play that live too,
and I'm sure it's amazing. I think when you become the guy who does it all the time, some of the magic gets kind of taken away. Yeah. So I think that I have a lot of love in my life. But I'm not, I can't honestly sit here and tell you that like, music, at least in the same way that a lot of other people do now, is just everything that I love. It's a huge part of my life, and it has helped me build a life that I love. It has helped me build a life that I love. But, all of these songs that I loved, I then do a million times, and then, it kind of fades, which is something that I think is interesting about the whole concept, because I think, and I actually kind of want to get both of your takes on it, because I think love is a very interesting concept, and it's something that we don't really understand.
Right. Which is the whole reason for Sparks of Love.
Yeah. So, I mean, I think that I'm sure that you've talked to a lot of people that just have completely different takes on it. And I am a little bit more of a, I was raised by a psychologist.
Oh, wow.
So
I didn't know that.
my dad's a neuropsychologist, and most of my family are all kind of scientific, and
I like them already.
Well, I'm certainly not an atheist or anything, but and I was raised Episcopalian, so I went to church growing up.
Those darn Episcopalians.
but I'm not. I'm not like a practicing. I don't practice a religion. I do consider myself spiritual, but I think that it's something that we don't really understand. Like you can. As a psychologist, you can look at the things that go on in a brain. You can put all the
EEG
all the nodes and whatever. Or I don't even know what you call those stuff.
EEG.
And
the
you can
squiggly stuff in that.
Well, I used to work in EEG lab. So
okay, I didn't know that.
Yeah. Well, my ex-husband's a neuropsychologist. When you said your dad was, I'm like, what?
Interesting.
I didn't know.
What was his specialty?
He was looking at attention span and sleep. At first.
Okay.
And then he expanded out to attention deficit disorder and treating people that have attention deficit disorder.
I'll talk about a booming business.
Yeah.
As my dad was, his specialty was in epilepsy.
Okay.
And I suppose he still is. He's semi-retired.
Okay.
But
we probably know some of the same people, because I worked in an epilepsy lab at UCLA for a while.
Okay.
Yeah, that's too funny.
Yeah, I was born in LA.
Okay.
So he was out there for a little while, and then he spent, 30 years at Strong.
Mm-hmm. Wow.
So when I think about things like love, or I think about things like religion or any of these bigger topics, I think I've spent a lot of my life thinking in the terms of a scientist, like, well, you can break everything down to, well, we know what, a cell is, and we know what's inside of a cell. So like we know how it all works. And just kind of recently I've come to think, like, just because you can put a name to it and you can see how things interact with one another doesn't necessarily mean that you get the concept of it. And if you want to bring this back to music, I have a memory of growing up when I didn't play any instruments. I was 4 or 5, maybe I was probably a little older than that. But I remember my uncle Frank, who actually works for NPR. He came over to visit, and he picked up a guitar. I had just started taking guitar lessons, and he just started strumming chords. And me, as somebody who didn't know how the guitar worked, I couldn't do it myself. I was transfixed. Yeah. I thought it was incredible. And he was just playing G and D and now you fast forward, and I kind of know how it all works, and some of the magic has been taken away. So when I go to see live shows, I kind of understand how what they're doing and how it works.
So does that take away that inside knowledge? Does that take away some of the magic for you? Is what you're trying to say? I've heard actors say that, like that once they became an actor in like a major blockbuster film that has a lot of magical realism to it, it's not as fun for them because they know what happened to make it get to that point.
Yeah.
And so, so what if we took like your example of your uncle coming in and playing, strumming the guitar in that first moment? Now and what if we took that as an analogy? The way you deconstruct a song, the component parts that comprise the song. Is love like that? Are we trying to do the same thing with love? Are we trying to say, after a while, you see the same person coming through the door for 30 years. Is the magic gone in that? Can we make an analysis, of that?
Well, now I can't really speak to that. I think I've been chronically single.
I love that. I'm chronically single. I love that.
Well, so like I've had relationships, but I've had one that's lasted longer than I had one that lasted a couple years, and other than that, they've been 6 months.
Yeah.
I think living in a very transient place,
Yeah.
Honolulu. I lived, Honolulu 11 years. I got used to people moving from the mainland and then leaving, and I had a lot of those sort of whirlwind 2-week to 6-week kind of
Hallmark movies.
Romances, I guess you could call them. I mean, I think I was definitely doing a lot of drinking and partying back then too. So like it was.
Isn't drinking great?
It's
amazing.
A little too great. I'm coming up on 3 years off the sauce.
Oh wow, good for you.
But that being said, back in my 20s, I mean, I don't remember a lot of my 20s, and that's probably part of the reason.
Yeah.
Who really remembers their 20s?
I do.
Really
I remember.
Useless period
I do
of time.
remember.
I'm 23.
But he's
23.
I'm 23.
Oh man!
And you're chronically single, right? You're also chronically single.
Well, I'm not chronically single. I'm just single at the moment.
He's 23.
Ladies.
He hasn't gotten to be chronically anything.
Oh, okay.
Ladies.
Man, I have to admit, I'm a little jealous, man. Now that I know that you're 23, I already kind of.
Oh, come on.
Stop.
Okay, so
Dude, I look like I'm 45.
No, that's not what I meant.
Well, no. This is a funny story. So the only reason I say that is because I was at a Starbucks 3 years ago, and a woman tapped me on the shoulder, and she goes, how's your wife and kids?
Oh, wow.
And I go, excuse me? She goes, oh, my God, I'm sorry. I thought you were my friend. And I go, well, how old do you think I am? She goes, 45. I'm like, 45?
Wow. She just probably needed LASIK,
Yeah,
she just, that was probably what it was. But you know what? The thing was, let me just stop him there. I'm older than you guys. We don't need to get in how much older, but I am. I am chronically single, as Dave has said here, but I don't want to go back to Evan's age. I am loving the heck out of this stage of life. I'm having so much fun. Like you saw the life so Dave came to my house and had this, we had a great party. I'm not saying that my life is all parties, but I have so much freedom now. I've worked, I've gained, a really incredible career and a very diverse one. And my kids are grown. They're out of the house now. I have a level of freedom and security that I've never had in my life. And I always think, look forward, keep looking forward. So far for me, because I've done the hard work to build up that, it does get better. Like, it's so much fun. And I've heard, and this is maybe a little uncouth for this podcast, but I'm going to say it. I have heard that in your 70s, you have the most sex of your life. I'm like, whoo, what a goal. Like, there's definitely, positive trajectory. So you don't need to go backwards. Well, I met him. I met Hugh Hefner.
Wow.
You met Hugh Hefner?
He came to UCLA. So I was working in UCLA Communication Studies, and Tom Plate was the editor of the LA Times. He taught for us as an adjunct professor. And he wanted to have Hugh Hefner, who's the Playboy Mansion was like a mile or two from UCLA campus. And one time I was out on the beach in a bikini, and his, I guess, minions came and gave me a little sheet of paper and asked me to be audition for Playboy. And I said,
what?
Absolutely not. I was absolutely not going to do that. But he did come, and he wore his robe. He pulled up in a limousine right outside Kinsey Hall. I can still remember looking down there. I'm like, oh, my God, Hugh Hefner He showed up in his robe. He showed up in his robe.
And you turned that down?
Gosh.
I did turn that down.
I think that trumps every story that I
That trumps every story I have.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
That's crazy.
Okay, I didn't want every Tom, Dick, and Harry to be able to flip open a magazine and look at me and get their jollies off.
No,
I believe that's me and my private relationships.
I understand turning it down. I'm just, just to be propositioned.
Yeah. You're a better person than I am. If I was a woman and somewhat attractive, I would definitely do that.
He just called me somewhat attractive. Did you hear that?
No, I said if I was somewhat, you're more beautiful than I am.
Thank you.
I am not attractive.
You are too. Don't.
I think that is a fundamental difference between men and women, though. Is that we think that if we were women, that we would automatically
for sure.
But I think that's just because that's the way that we were raised.
Well, women are commoditized. So think about pulling it back to music.
It's true.
How many love songs, let's take Taylor Swift out of the equation. I love Taylor Swift. Cut it out with that. The Bills are playing tomorrow, and Taylor Swift is coming, apparently, and everyone's like, we don't want her here. She's loving her boyfriend. She's supporting her boyfriend, and I am a huge Taylor Swift fan. Self-made woman.
Okay, well, let me just point out, you said, let's not talk about Taylor Swift, then you started talking about Taylor Swift. But if you're going to bring up Taylor Swift, I'm a born and raised Eagles fan.
I love them.
And she was an Eagles fan.
I thought you meant the music. I thought you meant the music.
The Philadelphia Eagles.
Team.
And then
that's the big controversy, too.
She went from being an Eagles fan to dating the player on the team that beat us in the Super Bowl.
which is his brother, right? The Eagles, Jason Kelsey and Travis Kelsey.
Yeah, but she was an Eagles fan
because she was raised in
life.
PA.
Yeah.
Yes.
Anyway, we don't need to talk
that's where love comes in. Okay, so like I used to date a guy who was a Yankees fan, and I was, growing up, I was a Red Sox fan. I ended up marrying a guy from Boston. We're divorced now, but I kept the Red Sox. And I couldn't make myself put on the Yankees shirt. And I did it one time. He bought me a Yankees jersey.
Why?
I felt dirty. I did. I just felt so freaking dirty all day. Like the Yankees are Darth Vader to me. And no, I'm sorry, but they are. I know. I know.
God, why don't you just stab me in the back? Really?
But so Taylor Swift is showing she's making herself uncomfortable for love. Think about that.
Yeah.
And isn't part of that, part of love is service and making yourself a little uncomfortable sometimes so you can bend and grow.
Sure.
How is she making herself uncomfortable?
Well, he just said she was a lifelong Philadelphia Eagles fan, and now she's wearing the Chiefs coat.
Well, so that you can look at it one of two ways. I think you could look at it the way that you're looking at it, which is very favorable to her, or you could look at it from the perspective of an Eagles fan, which is that she casts aside her team.
Mm-hmm.
Or could she love two teams at once?
No. Impossible.
Nope.
Impossible.
Okay, you're telling me that in all your years of being a musician, you haven't loved two songs equally or two people.
It's a different thing. It's not like you're not picking a team. You're picking a song.
No, I think equally. See, equally, no. But that being said, I think that men are inherently. I don't like to generalize, but men are a little bit dumber when it comes to sports teams. Somebody once said that professional sports are reality television for men. Yeah, and I think that there's some truth to that. And I'm irrationally stupid about my sports teams, just basically just the Philadelphia Eagles. And so what I think that I would imagine that there are. Women out there that are just a little smarter and more reasonable about the whole thing.
Well, I think football's a little different than reality TV. I mean, there's more concussions.
Well, more, depends on the show.
Well, I think it's the more that because I don't know why our society tends to do this. Like they because we're such a civil. No, we're not that civilized. We're a very violent culture.
Yeah, what's the difference between the NFL and the old gladiators?
Right. Well, that's what it is. You're sitting in a stadium. You're watching guys.
The absence of beheadings might be the difference.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you go into some cultures over the sea, and
I mean, they're technically beheading people. I mean, they're getting concussions. They're
brain damage.
That's true.
Brain damage.
And your father probably knows a lot about that with the neuroscience.
Yeah, but speaking of being rabid about sports, I mean, my father is a brain doctor, and he's just as rabid about the Eagles as I am.
I have trouble with it too because I'm a violent survivor, and I do see sometimes on the TV show, when you're watching DeMar Hamlin, for instance, when he got hit and his heart stopped. And now some of the commentary is like he's alive now, but he's holding up a slot. But I feel a little bit guilty. And I've heard so many people that have said, we love football. We love the competition of it. Can you imagine football without the tackling? I don't know. But getting back to love, and on the drive over here, I heard David Bowie's Modern Love. And I thought, how perfect, to hear that song coming in here. And he had said, before he died, he had said the greatest decision of his life. And I was waiting for it, it's going to be, to play music or to start that. You know what he said? He said, marrying Iman, his wife. And I thought, here's this famous man, incredibly famous man. And he's had, so many successful, years in the music industry.
He got arrested in Rochester, too, didn't he?
He did. He got arrested in Rochester. Has an interesting different color eye because he's a survivor of violence, too. I think he had somebody hit him, and so he's got one blown pupil. Very interesting eyes. But he said of all the things he was, the most proud of, and that was the most instrumental in his life, to use a music term, was who he chose to marry. And I thought that was just such a fascinating thing. But if you look at his catalog, he has an interesting take on love. And I don't know, do you ever find yourself gravitating to songs that are just about love? Do you like love songs? Do you have favorites?
I think a lot of it depends upon where I am in life. Mm-hmm. I think if you go through, now I spent an awful lot of time kind of dating and floating around, you know, and so that means that there were a lot of honeymoon phases followed quite often quickly by breakups, you know, and so I think. Ooh. Well, you know, I
Taylor
think
Swift's got plenty of them.
Oh yeah, and I'm sure there's another one coming.
Oh, I guarantee there's another one coming.
And you know, I think that it has so much to do with just where I am, and that feeling can quite literally change within the course of a day.
Yeah,
you know, so I'll get asked at my shows like, play your favorite song. It's like, well, I don't have a favorite song, and it's true. I don't, and I don't think that that's that unusual. I think if I asked anybody, what's your favorite song, they might have an answer. I mean, I have an answer for that question, but it's a lie because
moves.
It changes all the time.
Yeah,
you know?
I understand that. I think for me, music becomes the soundtrack of my life.
Sure.
Do you have that one song you think of when you think of that a particular person? Because I do. That's our song, you know, and you stop. I do that.
I do. You're probably not going to like this example, though.
Okay.
Well, so my first girlfriend, which we were together for a long time, and it was I was 19, and I was a dumb kid, and she cheated on me, and it was painful.
Yeah.
And we had a song that became our song, and it's a song that gets requested, and I still play it to this day. Yeah. But it brings back kind of not pleasant memories.
Yeah.
You know?
Do I dare ask which one it is?
We were dating in 2009, 2010, and this song had come out. It was Home by Edward Sharpe. Which is actually pretty funny. I have a friend. I run an open mic night in Webster every Tuesday, and I have a friend
at Bunsey's, right?
At Bunsey's,
yeah.
And I have a friend, Nicole, who comes, and she has decided that that's. I've never told her this before, but she has decided that that's the song that she wants to sing with me. So I sing it all the time, and
that's you showing love. That's you showing love.
Yeah. And she gives me a hard time because you know, we kind of have a little brother-sister sort of relationship, and so she gives me a hard time sometimes for being too hard on her or something. But I should tell her that story, that I sing a song that reminds me of some painful memories.
I have that too. When I got married, I didn't want to walk down the aisle to the traditional wedding march. I'm not a traditional person. And at the time, I was really into jazz. Like I was really just in my jazz phase at UCLA, you know, that time period in your life. And so I played for my walking down the aisle song, Louis Armstrong's version of What a Wonderful World. I now hate that song. It is beautiful. It is a beautiful song. It was in, I think, Good Morning Vietnam. They did a flyover of Vietnam with Robin Williams looking
Madagascar.
down. Was it? Yeah. Oh, yeah.
It's everywhere.
It's such a beautiful song. And the way he does it, the arrangement's really cool. His voice is so distinct.
Yeah.
And yet I'm walking, when I hear that song, I'm suddenly under the willow tree, which is where my daughter's middle name comes from, that willow tree, Madison Willow. She's a musician. Plugged for my daughter. I named all of my kids like with place names and places. My daughter's named after the tree my parents planted for me.
Wow.
Willow trees bend and flow with time, and they're, you know, adaptive. And so I wanted her to be that way. But anyway, I got married under that tree or beside of that tree. And so whenever I hear What a Wonderful World by Louis Armstrong, I'm walking down the aisle again, and I'm headed towards some good years, but also ultimately something that, you know, broke my nose and hurt me in certain ways. And so as a protective thing, music can become our love language, but it also can become our cautionary language, right?
Yeah. Well, I like something you said earlier, which is that it's the soundtrack to your life. Yeah. And nowadays with it being everywhere, I mean, you walk in a grocery store, it literally is everywhere.
Yes.
And I think that there's good and bad things about that. I do think that when you are completely saturated with it, it does take away the specialness of it. You know, I mean, I think music people used to put on an album. And they would just be like, what are we going to do tonight? We're going to sit and we're going to listen to a record. Yeah. We're just going to sit and listen to it.
Yeah.
I can't imagine doing that.
Oh, I do that on Sundays. After I drop off my son with autism, I have a vinyl record player and I'll make myself a bee's knees cocktail and I have a window seat and I play the vinyl the whole way. I'll stop by Record Archive, get a new album. Not every Sunday, obviously. I'd have a huge house full of albums.
That's awesome.
I do that because it's what you're talking about. It slows me down. It centers me. And I also feel that there's an intimacy with the musician. I understand the story arc that they're trying to tell in the arrangement of songs. Do you agree with that?
Yeah, absolutely. So and that sounds a little, it's meditative and a way to express self-love.
Yes,
Yeah,
absolutely. Yes, that is a form of self-love.
Totally. And I think that I do that sometimes too. I have listened to entire albums on my own. I guess what I was talking about was listening to music around a record player was like a social event. Listening to my dad talk about growing up and having the new Led Zeppelin album come out, like he would invite friends over, they would put the record on and they would sit and listen to it. And I don't think I've ever done that. And nowadays, I don't think that anybody in I was about to say our generation. I forget. You're
Gen Z.
Wait, how old are you?
Your knees are so much more.
Are you a
functional
millennial,
than I am.
Dave?
Oh yeah.
So we have 3 generations here. So I'm Gen X, and you're millennial, and you're Gen Z.
I'm just thinking about how nice your back must feel right now. 'Cause, man, what I would do to have 23-year-old knees and back.
So I think what we should do here is when a new album comes out, we should all get together and listen to it. I'm inviting you. We can do that.
My younger brother, because I wanted to ask you, like, because this actually brings up a really good point. Because where do you think that comes from? Of like making an event out of say like a piece of art coming out, because you don't see that with a lot of art forms.
That's true.
And my brother still, like, even like now it's more digital now. Like I understand like vinyl's made kind of a comeback, but when I was growing up, vinyl was hardly.
It's the needle scratch.
Well, it was CDs. It was mainly like CDs and like stuff you heard on the radio. But now it's just like you have an album dropping on like iTunes or Spotify, and friends will get together
listening
and
parties, right?
Yeah, it's like a listening party.
Yeah.
Where do you think that comes from?
It's because it's special. And I guess that's what I'm talking about. I mean, what makes something special? It's because there's a rarity to it. It's rare.
Well, we get to have a listening party. I'm inviting you all to come to my house, and I have a vinyl record player. It was right there, and we'll do that.
Well, we'll have to find an album that we all want to listen to. I can't pretend that I'm going to be interested in the new Taylor Swift album. Whatever that
I already
unless
have
there's
it.
a Travis breakup song.
Oh, please! I'm hoping. Let's
whatever genre. I think I kind of know your genre, but I am into all genres of music.
Well, you might be surprised. Somebody was asking me last night, like, what your favorite genre of music is, and I think
don't say screamo. Don't say screamo.
No, okay. not screamo. But
no offense to screamo fans.
I do think that there are good songs in every genre.
Yeah.
But I think part of the thing that has become my favorite are songs that like I just can't hope to cover. Mm-hmm. So I have this conversation with a lot of people where they ask me like what I listen to, and unfortunately, the pleasure of listening to music and having it be a form of meditation or some sort of calming practice that has been kind of taken away from me. And I've talked to other musicians and they have a similar experience with it. And unfortunately, when I listen to a song, if something comes on the radio, I can't help it, but my brain immediately goes into this feeling of, okay, well, what key is the song in? Are they singing outside of my range?
Yeah.
How could I cover it? And my brain immediately goes into work mode.
I
go into work mode.
What about world music? Like sometimes on NPR, they'll have world music and you don't perform that. That's something so outside your genre that maybe you can meditate on, like African music.
That's exactly what I was going to say.
Really?
Is that like it's not that I don't like the way that country music sounds, although there is some genre.
Depends on the era.
Depends upon the
Taylor
era.
Swift used to be a country musician.
She used to be.
You're telling me that Johnny Cash is not in your wheelhouse, like Folsom Prison Blues?
I perform Johnny Cash.
Yeah, I know.
I don't necessarily get the same kind of pleasure out of listening to Johnny Cash.
As a Southerner, I'm the same way, and I feel like I lose my Southern card because I'm not a huge Hank Williams Jr. fan or even Hank Williams Sr. I'm more of a rocker girl, but Chris Stapleton kind of bridges that gap because he loves rock music.
Yeah.
But for you, like being the artist, you can deconstruct every song. Your brain doesn't get to just relax and enjoy, right?
Yeah. So I think going back to the whole like magic behind everything and the magic behind love.
Yeah.
These things that you don't quite understand, they are magic. I mean, how many things did scientists discover how to do? I mean, the fact that we can fly in airplanes.
Yeah.
Like still just blows my mind. Like, because I don't really I understand. Okay, so like you push something against wind, and if it's at a specific angle, then it'll push the thing up.
Force equals mass times acceleration.
Okay, right,
yeah.
exactly. But I guess that's my point. Is you go back, we went back 2,000 years or before Da Vinci or whatever,
right.
and you saw people get into this like cylinder and go up in the air. They would all call it magic.
Yeah, there's a famous story. I think it's Icarus with the wings and the wax and melting and falling down. Yeah,
and
he flew too close to the sun, right? Is that what?
Yeah,
flew too close to the sun, which is a great.
Now, of course, they were gluing feathers to a man's. It's a myth, but now we have like the military has created jetpacks.
Yeah,
and there are actually men that can put things on their arms and they can go flying.
I was promised that as a kid. There used to be a show called Real People. I don't know if Scott remembers this. And they showed it one night and I was like 11-year-old. I'm like, oh my God, I'm going to get to fly to school in a few years. There's something really cool about that.
Yeah. And I mean, Back to the Future, they also promised us flying cars.
Well, they kind of are getting there. I've seen some things on the internet.
But I guess my point is that those things that you can't explain and the things that are beyond your comprehension feel magical.
Yeah.
And so I think going back to your question, listening to Chris Stapleton play Tennessee Whiskey or any of his other songs, it's like I've gotten to the point now, and it's not because I'm special, it's because I've spent my 10,000 hours on it.
Right.
I've gotten to the point where I'm just like, okay, well, that's an A, that's a B minor. All right, that's some kind of other version of a B minor. Maybe he's playing a D over B. And then he's back to an A, and it's like, all right, well, that's how the song is constructed. And the chord progression doesn't change.
But let me just say this guy is a genius. So Dave plays live loops. Talk a little bit about that, because I want to make sure we get that in today. And it was incredible in my house, like the things he does live. Talk a little bit about what you are a special musician, in my opinion, and I am a music like snob. Like I'm blown away by this man. So.
I have to shout out two friends of mine in Hawaii who really got me into it. GJ and Jason Laeha, who are both fabulous live musicians in Hawaii. I kind of came from what I would call the Jeremy Chang looping coaching tree, which is Jeremy Chang is a musician. I think he's a realtor now, out in the music scene in Honolulu, and looping is the technology's been around for a while, but Ed Sheeran made it popular about 10 years ago. And for anybody who doesn't know what looping is, I don't know, have you ever seen a looper before? So what looping is it's basically like, you have a tape recorder, you can hit record and then you can stop the recording, right? And then you can rewind and you can hit play again. So what a loop pedal does is you press a button and you start recording yourself. And when you press the button again, the recording starts over immediately, and it becomes a seamless loop. What's difficult about it is that if you're going to loop a phrase musically, you have to be perfect. So like there can't be a fraction of a second blip in there. Otherwise, as it goes, you're going to hear that little bit as it gets. It's kind of hard to explain without the loop pedal to show you how it works. But essentially, what I do with most of my songs is you start with like a beat. So I beatbox, and then all of a sudden you have a musical phrase that sounds like a drum set, or as close to a drum set as I can get. So using my drums and everything, you could just go like a
wow,
and then you loop that, and then all of a sudden, for the rest of your song, you have this thing behind you going.
That's amazing.
Oh wow!
Doesn't that sound amazing?
So that's
awesome.
Pretty sick.
So that's beatboxing, and you can use the body of your guitar to as a kick drum, and I have another little pedal that has a snare or a clap sample, so that I can hit that with my feet. So then all of a sudden it's like this thick kind of drum beat, and then you take another loop pedal, and then I can layer a bass, or I have a pedal that makes my guitar sound like an orchestra, and then you're looping little phrases that repeat throughout a song.
And he does that live. He hasn't pre-planned this because we're calling out songs to him, and he's orchestrating it in his mind how he's going to do it.
Get out of here!
Yeah.
Wow.
So
we're all like crazy about this guy at my part. Everyone's talking about him.
So let me ask you a question. When you're doing the beatboxing and like when it comes to like actually like sing a lyric, like does that like how does that work in particular?
Well, so that's how the looping works. So for me to have a drum beat for the entire length of a 5-minute long song, if I want a drum beat to last for 5 minutes, this is exactly how much beatboxing I have to do.
Yeah.
That's it.
Because what looping is it records that phrase and then it just repeats.
Wow.
And then I can take, and then there's a layer. So there's a million different loop stations out there, and mine are very, very simple actually. And I think that what I do with them might be complicated, but they're always coming out with new ones, and they're like, oh well, this one does this new technique thing or whatever, and it has this effect on it, and I don't need it. I mean, it's cool, and by no means do I besmirch anybody's. If you're making money and making people happy, making music, more power to you. I don't care if you're a DJ or you're a guy around a campfire, like do it the way that you want to do it. I love it, and I think that if everybody followed the same formula, then it would all be boring. So like I wanted to find my little niche and my little pocket. And I talked to some musicians that, have everybody's very opinionated and everybody's ego gets involved. But if you're doing it, you're making money and you're making people happy, go for it.
And I think that's a lot of what music is. So I have a story to tell, and you might relate to this. During the pandemic, we were all isolated for so freaking long, and people were afraid to go to the grocery store. And I finally braved going out to Wegmans. I really, really needed something. I don't remember what it was. And I go into Wegmans on Chile, and they have Muzak going. And I'm Gen X. And there was a song that came on, and it was Sweet Child of Mine. Like, it was like a slower version of it. And you could just see the people my age just like, we're like, it's like our Batman signal,
Yeah.
And so we're out there picking up the groceries, and I could hear all the people. There's a lot of people there that day humming together. It was a bonding moment. Music can really
they all hum to that song?
Just kind of singing it, not really hum, but singing it under your breath a little bit. And I remember looking over at the sky, I'm like, oh yeah, like doing that thing. And there's even memes on Instagram and stuff about this song will make every millennial stop what they're doing. And they play a few.
Sure.
I knew them. I knew all the opening clips that they were doing. But there is something very unifying about a generational song. Like I think for my mom's generation, the Eagles, the music group, the Eagles, that was huge for them.
Sure.
And I grew up listening to it. So I also like the Eagles. But there's just something very unifying about even the opening chords. Like I still know the opening chords to Sweet Child of Mine because it was playing when I graduated high school. And we all went down to Myrtle Beach, South Carolina. And every car in the Strand was playing it, blaring it out there. So that's what my visual image is of that song. Like I'm 18. I just graduated high school. I'm at the beach. I look good in a bikini still. And, we're all hearing that music. So,
well, it's interesting that you say that because so during the days I'll go and I'll play assisted living facilities because you're not allowed to say nursing homes anymore.
Yeah, assisted living. Talk about love, by the way. He's playing for people that a lot of times are really vulnerable and society forgets about. That's one of the things I loved when I interviewed you. I'm like, oh yeah, this guy's a good guy. I can invite this stranger to my home to play music because he's doing something like that.
Well, I mean, I think that there is. I think I do get a certain amount of satisfaction out of playing for an audience like that, partly because half the time I get hired to go play in a restaurant and they say, all right, you go in the corner and you keep it down.
Yeah.
And then everybody has their dinner. And
then why did they invite you to play music?
I mean, hey, if you want to pay me $100 an hour to come, I'll come and do anything.
Right.
But for the assisted living facilities, you get to it's kind of funny. I've talked to other musicians that I know that are trying to make a living. And I've said, have you guys heard about assisted living facilities? Because I only found out about it about a year ago, that most of them have an entertainment budget and you can go and you can sign up and they'll pay you and you come in and you play for them. And most musicians I've told say, no, it doesn't interest me. And I say, why? And they say, well, because I want to go and I want to play at a bar in front of young people. And I want to do the sort of, and without saying it, I know what they're saying. I want to do the rock star thing.
You're not going to run into an agent in an assisted living facility. Is what
but
I'm thinking.
I'll tell you, very
I don't
few
think you're going to run
things.
to one in the bar either.
Well, that's what I'm saying. And I'll tell you, there are very few things that are going to make you feel more like a rock star when you are at my level, which is, professional musician in Rochester, New York.
Great music history here, by the way.
Yeah. Yeah. But I'm not in Nashville, and I'm not getting signed anytime soon. And
we'll see about that.
We'll see about that. But there's very few things in Rochester that will make you feel more like a rock star than playing for 40 people, men and women in their 70s, 80s, and 90s, because they're all watching you the entire time. They're all singing along. And then afterwards they come up to you and they want to shake hands. They want to take pictures and they want autographs, so and I genuinely want to help out other musicians. And I'm like, why will you guys not do this? You can make $150 in the middle of the day.
Yeah.
And I promise you, you're going to feel more like a rock star doing it there than you will any of these other bars.
And look at the way his eyes lit up. Like the love that you say, you've lost in some ways because it's work. Yeah. Your face doesn't show work. Your face is showing pure joy and love right now.
Well, and I think that part of that is because
you're making an impact.
And love is reciprocal. Yes. And showing affection and showing whatever form it comes, and you need to get it back. Yes. And so I think that there are plenty of times where I've been on stage in front of a crowd on a Friday night. I used to play this bar in Hawaii that the time slot was 1:30 in the morning to 3:30 in the morning. So, you're playing and it was one of the only bars that was continued to be open after 2. Yeah. So every tourist in the entire town that wanted to keep drinking would all come to this bar. Yeah. And it's like, talk about feeling like, a rock star or whatever. Half the time you're up there and you're playing and there are a couple people dancing. Yeah. The bar is packed, but everybody's just trying to get laid. Nobody's paying attention to you. Yeah. And so you would think that you would be up there really feeling, and I've played shows that are ticketed events. I played the Blue Note, and I've done bigger things. I played every year. I go and I play Wingfest at Buffalo Bills Stadium.
Oh, really? Oh, that's cool.
And that's sick. Up on the not the teleprompter. What do you call it? The jumbotron. Oh, wow! I'm up on the jumbotron playing a stadium. My music's getting pumped and nobody's listening. Wow. So there are these moments where you're just like, this should feel better for me, and it doesn't. Why? Yeah. And it's because you're not getting anything back from your audience. Yeah. Now you flip that around and you go and you play for these kind of marginalized. I mean, don't get me started on the way we treat our elderly. Yeah. Or
the disabled. My son, Jared, who you met.
Absolutely.
Playing for group homes could be a really cool thing. Or even the ARC.
And all due respect to you and your friends, the best experience I got out of playing your party that night was playing for your son. Oh, because
my goodness! See, I didn't want to cry today. I did my makeup well.
You cry at every podcast.
Does she really? Yeah.
Well, because that's sweet. Like Jared was so excited to meet you, and I don't know if you remember, he and I started the dancing. It was when we were there, and he started. And Jared and I'll tell you a little dance song. When he was little, he didn't really speak very much, and the way I reached him was he would stand on my toes. You know how you stand on your mom's toes and you do the dancing, and I would sing him Moon River. That was our song. Years later, when he was a teenager and having hormonal problems and really being violent, he attacked me one time. And people in the neighborhood where he had attacked me had to pull him off of me. The sheriff came. He was put in the back of a cop car. I was like, get him out of there. Get him out of there. And the sheriff rolled the window down because he didn't really know that Jared doesn't look like he has autism. It's not a thing you can see. And Jared was crying. And he started, this is a kid who hardly speaks, right? And years earlier, I'd done the Moon River thing. He sang it to me. He sang Moon River to me in the back of a cop car. And the cops start crying. Like everybody is like crying. To me, that's the power of music to show love.
Absolutely.
Have you, and it sounds like you've done this, have you ever used music to woo someone, to get a girl to fall in love with you? Like, have you done that say anything boombox thing over,
No, I've never done that. Never done that. I think that that's one of those movies that like you look back on it and it's like, boy, John Cusack, he's a handsome guy, and it was a Hollywood movie, and boy, what a sweet moment. I think you take that that moment and you put it in real life, and all of a sudden he's getting the cops called on him. You know,
the stalkers outside my window.
I didn't come up with that. I think that's from a TV show. They call it I think it was from did you guys ever see How I Met Your Mother?
Yeah.
I think they call it the Lloyd Dobler effect, which is like you can do something creepy, but if you're a good-looking guy and you're in a Hollywood movie, it's okay.
Yeah.
But like in the context of that, she doesn't want to talk to him anymore, so he goes to her house in the middle of the night and starts blaring music in her front yard.
Yeah.
I don't think that's very cool.
Well,
you probably shouldn't do that.
I met John Cusack when I first visited L.A.
Oh, I'm jealous.
He is really handsome. He's really handsome.
I believe it. I'm a big fan.
But you're also
met John Cusack?
Well, yeah, he
That's
was in Century City Mall with his group. He had his posse with him, you know. Yeah, and he was in that long trench coat.
Why are you depriving us of these amazing experiences, Jerry?
I don't know. He wouldn't remember me. I just like, oh my God, John Cusack. And I've never been like a big fangirl, but John Cusack, come on, Gen X, like. But you're a handsome guy. I can't imagine if you showed up to a girl's window that you're interested in, no matter what time of night, she's opening that door.
I don't know.
I guarantee you.
In the context of that scene, like, did they have like a law? Because I've never actually.
You've never seen Say Anything?
No,
you gotta watch
movie.
Ione Skye, John Cusack's great movie.
I feel like a lot of problems though, like when people try to reenact scenes of movies, is because they become infatuated. It's not like real life where they get infatuated with a person in real life and they reenact that scene. But the difference is in the context of the scene in the movie, it makes sense because there's a build up. There's a relationship.
Sometimes it doesn't even make sense.
Right.
I mean, it's just a movie and they're following a script because they've written the ending already.
Yeah.
Real life doesn't work that way.
No.
I think that's
you want something original too. I don't want a guy who's just like doing, paint by number love.
Yeah.
I want something else authentic coming from the person that's special between us.
And this is coming from a filmophile. I am
Cinephile,
filmophile, whatever.
Whatever it is.
And, I think that to go and work in movies or TV shows or, do something special, I think that is the only thing that I would give up a career in music to do. My personal belief about like a really, really good music, a really, really good movie or film or TV show or whatever is that it's it really is like all art forms coming together.
Yeah.
And so I really think that it is the highest form of art. All that being said, there's so much garbage that is put out nowadays that the whole thing has been kind of distilled down.
Yep.
It's just content now. It's not even film.
I know. Right. But that being said, like, I don't think that there is those really special theater experiences. Like, there are few things that will make you feel more than a really, really fantastic movie. So all of that being said, listening, people thinking that Hollywood is real life it's delusion. Mm-hmm. And I think I was raised in some ways by movies. We had this big DVD collection and I thought the whole thing was fascinating. Yeah. And talking about like the magic behind music and like you said earlier that you had actor friends who when they see a movie, some of the magic is taken away. Yeah. So now I know how because I've done the research, I know how they create a lot of the things that they do in movies. But when I was a kid, I thought that it was magic.
Like E.T. when they bike across the moon. That's why they have that ride, I think, at Universal, because we all felt that. It was a great ride.
My experience with that was when I was a little boy, my parents got us all X-Men comics. I was an X-Men kid.
Yeah.
And when I heard that they were going to make a live action movie, I was blown away. And my biggest question was, how are they going to make the Cyclops beams? How could you do that? Like, how on earth could you make that? And then I went and I saw that. I was maybe 9 years old when it came out. And it was a magical experience, And then a couple of years later, I went and I saw all the Lord of the Rings movies. And completely magical experience.
Oh, those are amazing films.
Incredible. And as a kid, I could barely understand what was happening on the screen. And I certainly didn't understand how Peter Jackson did all of it. And then you watch the documentaries and it's like, oh, they're miniatures and it's all these little tricks of light or whatever. And then CGI comes out and okay, so now I understand how it all works. And I don't think that I'm better for understanding that. I spent a lot of time in my adulthood thinking, well, you're never better for not knowing something.
Yeah.
And my opinion on that has changed. I think that oftentimes you are better for
keep
for
the
not,
mystery.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think that is
analogous to love, right?
Yeah.
In
I think that there is a point where, for better or for worse, if you're in a relationship and you feel like you genuinely know everything about the other person,
Yes.
that is when you can start to lose it.
I used to work with my ex, and so I didn't get the opportunity to say, "How was your day?" because I already knew.
You knew it.
But, we're running out of time here, but I do want to say this. For Christmas, I decided to get someone presents that stimulated all the senses, your olfactory, your visual, your sense of touch, taste, auditory. And so my favorite thing that I gave them a clue ahead of time because it's a big box. They wanted to know, what is in this big box? And I said, it's something that will give you perpetual happiness. And they were intrigued. There was a mystery. And for weeks, I sent it the first week of December, and for weeks and weeks and weeks. And we finally got together recently and opened it. And they had in their mind, what is this thing that's going to give me perpetual happiness? Do you know what it was? A record player. I got them a vinyl record player.
Yeah.
It is perpetual happiness because you can always put a new album on. You can always play a song that means something. And my plan is to sit down with them like you described earlier and then savor an album. I got them Tyler Childers because that's the one that they really enjoy. Yeah. So I listened for weeks and months. I listened to what is it that this person really likes to listen to? And music was my way and still is how I show love to my son with autism. Yeah. We go to concerts. We make CMAC, our campground during the summer. And my daughter, I support her music career, as you know.
Yeah.
And I'm listening to her songs on the way over here, and it's full circle. And then the way I showed love to my friends was hiring you as a surprise, and there's a live musician in the house. So for me, music is one of my love languages, food being another. And I haven't lost the mystery. I don't know how to play guitar. I know a little bit about piano, embarrassingly little. I don't know how a song is structured. Mm-hmm. But I think what you are is a gift to the world. And I really am not laying it on thick. I really do think you are, because for me, music is a way of showing love. And so I thank you for that.
Yeah, thank you very much. I think it is, they call it the universal language.
Yeah.
And I think that one of the things that can be that we all understand, even if you have no idea about anybody's background and you come from completely different societies.
Even if you're mute, like autism and mute, right?
Yeah. Or deaf people. Deaf people understand music. Yeah. And most people understand the concept of love.
Yeah.
And I think that if I was going to kind of put on my little scientist hat and try to explain what do I think love is and what it means to the human race, is I do think that our concept of love and our ability to really think about it critically is what separates us from animals, and I'm not saying that because we don't really understand exactly how smart dolphins are.
My cat loves me. Come on.
No, and I get it, except that I think that while animals might feel something along the lines of love, I think that a lot of their behavior towards you could be explained in dependability or some evolutionary need to reproduce or the way that a mother feels about their cub.
Yeah.
But I think that as human beings, we have a consciousness that we spend all this time dissecting it. We are really curious about it, and we have the ability to ask ourselves and ask one another what it all means.
And what you do, your art form is the great connector. Music is the great connector. And even that night, there's a lot of different people at my party that night. And as soon as, people realize this is a live musician, we're all ended up in the living room and just having this little, concert. And it was one of my favorite memories of my adulthood.
Well, I'm honored. Yeah. I am glad that they all understood that it's live, because I think that if you come and you see me and you're not paying very close attention, you think I'm just hitting a play button. Mm-mm. But it is all live and different.
No, we're in the presence of an artist right here. So thank you so much.
Yeah, and, absolutely. Thanks for having me.
Thank you for your time today.
I'd love to come back.
Absolutely.
Yeah, let's do it again.
All right. Well, thank you so much for listening to Sparks of Love, and I hope you have a great week.